If nothing is certain, then anything is possible. If anything is possible, this certainly is. If nothing is certain, then anything is possible. If anything is possible, this certainly is. My name is Mark Brown. Welcome to My Paranormal Reality. BeingTurkeys. Occurred fall 2012. My wife and I were becoming more aware and in tune with our spiritual side. She began looking more into Native American beliefs and traditions, whereas I was merely becoming more curious about, really the nature of reality itself, I think. I had already started compiling my stories and realizing that there was indeed a book in the making. As I typed, edited, and reviewed, there were several potentially supernatural or paranormal situations that were raising questions to which my rational mind wanted answers. My wife, on the other hand, was coming to the belief that the Native Americans, who were in greater touch with nature, had a lot of things right. She was also concerned that those are being lost or forgotten. So she began gathering books and researching some of these. One of the concepts that she began researching was animal lore and animal spirits. These center on a concept that each type of animal represents a certain aspect of nature, or in some cases our behaviors. Some of these have carried forward into our modern-day speech. For instance, rabbits are attributed to speed, foxes to wit and cleverness, and the like. As summer was coming to a close and fall was approaching, we were looking back and reminiscing and realizing how truly blessed our life was. Our company had closed the year prior, and while it had been stressful and painful, and looking back, it had also been the best thing that could have happened. Our stress had since greatly diminished from being out of the company, and we had a windfall as well due to the company closing out its accounts. My wife suggested that we should start giving more, especially to the less fortunate. I agreed that it seemed the right thing to do. She realized that while we could donate to a fund, it's often unclear on who really benefits and how. She wanted it to be more personal. So one day, while she was out shopping, she took several $20 bills, folded them up, and dropped them inconspicuously in the store. When she got home, she was almost giddy with excitement. It was like she had done something illegal and gotten away with it. "Did you see anyone pick them up?" I asked. "No, but I put them in places where I know someone will see them," she replied, still smiling and jubilant. I thought it was kind of cute, and she was obviously enjoying it, so I encouraged her to keep it up. Over the next couple of weeks, she had done this several more times, each time just as giddy and excited as the last. Then something interesting happened. She texted me while I was at work. "Do you remember me telling you that turkeys were a sign of giving?" she asked. I did not, but it didn't matter. Her text was immediately followed by a picture of 3 wild turkeys standing on our back deck. I texted her back a thumbs up and went back to work, knowing she would tell me about it when I got home, and of course she did. The Native Americans and others tied to animal spirits, like author and spiritualist Ted Andrews, believe that turkeys are a sign of bounty, being plentiful, and of giving, she reminded me. I was interested and curious and asked a few questions, but being married for nearly 20 years, she knew me well and could tell that I was still dubious. What can I say? I am rooted in science and still a novice in spiritual beliefs. I just thought that it was kind of cool that I was giving out money and some turkeys showed up, she continued. I had to agree. It was kind of cool. She decided she was going to continue to drop money, but this time with little notes written on them. This is for you. Love yourself and others. And other little uplifting notes. The next week she texted me several photos while I was at work. More turkeys were in our yard and on our deck. We went up north to our vacation house for a long weekend, and on the way into town saw that another business had closed. The economy was tough on a lot of people, and it was hurting our little town up north. We both took a little extra spending cash with us, and whenever we were in a store, we would drop or place some money where someone was guaranteed a chance upon it. It felt good, and indeed it felt a little like we were breaking the law. The next day, my wife was headed into town to do a little more shopping and had set aside some more turkey money, as we started to call it, with little notes written on it. As she neared the store, she looked over and saw a line of nearly 30 turkeys walking along the road and entering a cemetery. She smiled, knowing that she was doing the right thing. When we returned home from up north, there were 18 turkeys running around in our backyard. By now, winter was in full swing in Michigan. My wife kept to her turkey ways, and the turkeys remained at our house. The entire backyard snow had been trampled down with turkey tracks. It was weird and yet was giving a very fulfilling feeling. Around this time, I had finally scheduled to get more work done on my tattoos. After my brother passed, I knew that I was going to get a tattoo of him, but I couldn't figure out where. I am a Libra, and while not into astrology, I cannot deny my need for balance in life. To that, I could not determine where to get it, as a shoulder seemed appropriate, but out of balance for me. Then my dad died, and it became clear. They each got a shoulder. Sadly, and in a very wrong way, life was balanced. That had been almost 2 years now, and I needed to get some touch-up work to complete both tattoos. I wanted to get a lot more of it colored in, and I know from my past experience that it is a timely and painful process. However, I was committed. I didn't know how much my artist was going to charge, as I wanted a lot of touch-ups, so I took $300 from the bank just to be safe. As I was in his shop, waiting for him to start on me, I saw his wife come in carrying their baby. They spoke for a few minutes, and then I saw this intimidating-looking guy with tattoos from neck to foot lean over and sweetly and gently kiss his baby girl on the forehead as he said, "Bye, sweetie. Daddy has to go to work." He then sat me in his chair and went to work on me for over 4 hours. I had been in to see him 3 times already over the past 2 years. He had started with a black and white version of my brother riding his motorcycle on my left shoulder. The next session was adding color to my left shoulder and finishing off the tat. The third session was doing the bulk of my dad riding his motorcycle on my right shoulder. This session was to add more coloring to my dad's image and to fix some of the lettering on my brother's. I knew that it was going to be a fair amount of work, although I hadn't quite expected 4 hours, as this is a lot for one session. But he always did quality work on me, so I was happy to bear through the pain. I knew that the session was going long and would be wrapping up soon when I saw him taking small breaks to stretch out his fingers from gripping his ink gun. When he was done, we were both grateful for it to be over, but also pleased with the results. As usual, he wrapped up my arm and walked us both up front. Unlike usual, this time, however, he simply walked me to the doors versus the counter. I looked at him wryly, thinking he was tired and simply forgot to charge me. He obviously picked up on my look, and he simply smiled and shook his head as he told me, "Touch-ups are free." I smiled, but a little confused, and thanked him. I then walked over to the counter, bought some lotion, and left him a tip. However, it bothered me to the point that I was thinking about it the entire drive home. His shop is over an hour from my house, so that gave me plenty of time to think. When I got home, my wife asked me how it all went, and I shared with her both how pleased I was with the tat, but also his offer to not charge for the touch-up. I told her that the more I thought about it, on the way home, the more certain I was that I was going to pay him. She agreed. I had expected this session to cost about $150, and figuring a tip plus whatever extras would probably cost just over $200. So I had taken out 3 just to be safe and have some spending money left over. But something was telling me he could really use it, and more than he let on. The next day, I wrote him a short letter. That, in and of itself, is something. As I mentioned before, I seldom write anything by hand. I put the note in an envelope and then sent it overnight to his place of business. I started the letter by stating who I was and reminding him of his statement that touch-ups are free. I then pointed out that I had sat in his chair for over 4 hours watching him labor over my tat. I shared with him that during my drive home I'd come to think of some other things in life that are free. Appreciation, kindness, gratitude, and love. I continued by sharing the moment of seeing him and his wife and baby and seeing him kiss her goodbye. I had been genuinely touched by that moment of intimacy and told him so. I finished by telling him that I had taken $300 with me that night, expecting the bill for his service to be at least half that amount. I then pointed out that I had put those 3 $100 bills in this envelope with the note. I then said explicitly that this money was not meant for bills, nor for his business, but for him and his family. I asked him to take his wife and child out for a night of shopping, so that they could have the Christmas that I felt they deserved. A week later, I received a letter in the mail, also handwritten. It was from his wife, and I could tell that she was nearly overcome with emotion just from the writing. Mark, words cannot express how thankful we are for your letter and generosity. There was no way for you to know, but we needed that letter to lift our spirits this holiday. With the expansion of our business, we are going through a very rough time, and your generosity helped us to give our 3 children the Christmas they deserve. You restored our faith and provided us with a story to one day tell our children and teach them to be more like you. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Happy holidays. I kept that letter as a reminder to myself of what one can accomplish by following our instincts and doing what we feel is right, even if that means being a turkey. I hope you enjoyed that story. I certainly did. I don't know if you give much faith or thought about the concept of animal lore and animals being signs of spirits or signs of things to come, or etc., etc. If you do, you're probably very familiar with the name Ted Andrews. If not, you should look him up. I still take these things half-heartedly, but at the same time, there are, like many things in life, some coincidences that are really hard to ignore. In this one, the number of times that we saw turkeys that year, specifically that fall and that winter, it was truly bizarre. There was not an inch of our backyard that was not trampled, and it was like every turkey in our county had somehow decided that our backyard was the place to be that winter. I can't explain that. That's never happened since. Coincidentally, we've not been quote-quote turkeys in the past years. Certainly not as much as we were that year. You know, as they say, times get tough for everyone, and you can only be a turkey for so long, so to speak, before you have to start taking care of yourself again. But when we look back at that, you would think either we have a large flock of turkeys that are in our neighborhood that are always going to come to our backyard, or you have to admit that was a pretty fucking bizarre coincidence that they happen to pass through and make a long sitting in our yard during that pass through and not to come back again like that. But I think more on this story is really the concept of giving itself, and just what an immense feeling that can be. And no, that's not really paranormal. Really, the turkeys and the animal lore is the most paranormal aspect of this, but also it was one that I really wanted to make sure to get out this Thanksgiving, because God knows everyone can use some help. And this is the time of year where we all need to think about making sure that everyone else is going to be able to get through the winter, get through the tough times. And if you can lend a hand, then do it. It is amazing the feeling that you'll get from it. It doesn't have to be big. A friend of mine from high school will, on numerous occasions when she's getting a breakfast at McDonald's or something of that sort, pay for the car behind her's meal as well. And notes, of course, just how giddy that makes her feel when she does that. And I know from experience. It's the same feeling my wife and I got. It's a very good feeling, even when you know that you're not going to see who's going to receive that, but you know someone will. One of them that I like to do was, when I was hiding money, so to speak, would put it under a loaf of bread, so you know that when someone grabbed the loaf of bread, they're going to see a $20 bill there, and know that that loaf is paid for, as is probably a lot of what else they were going to get at that little store that day. Of course, it's always nice to be even more personal, but there's something about the anonymity. Knowing that you're helping someone somehow, but don't necessarily know who. But on the same hand, not so distanced, like giving it to some organization that is supposedly nonprofit, but 90% of their proceeds go to the people that are on their board, and only 10% go to the actual people that need help. That's not helping. That's just being a corporation. Nonprofit or not. But I digress. I'm going to keep this one short and just say, as we're hitting this turkey season, so to speak, reach out, lend a hand, help someone. You never know when you're going to be the one needing help and going to be very thankful for the hand that reaches out and helps you. I hope you all have a great and happy holidays. To our American listeners, happy Thanksgiving. And to everyone, take care.